30-minute breakout. We have seen this massive acceleration on AI, and the bad news is those bad guys have just the same tools as we do, and they are running just as fast as we are. So we're here today to talk with some experts in the session. All of these are former Fortress Award winners, so we trust them implicitly. We do have the Fortress Awards coming up. The deadline's actually tomorrow if you're looking to get into that. I know a guy who can get you a little extra time if you need some. So before we get started here, I'm going to let all the panelists kind of introduce themselves, and we're going to have a quick lightning round of kind of give us your perspective on what changed most in the last 12 months that's really impacting identity, trust, and that response speed. So with that said, Justin, why don't you kick us off?
Great. Thanks, Russ. Hey, guys, Justin here. I'm co-founder of Twine Security, and our mission is to go build digital employees that are going to serve as a fleet to address your execution problems in your cyber programs. So this idea is, how do you get multiple AI agents that are talking together in multi-disciplines to actually look strategically at your program and go execute? I think, Russ, your question was around what has changed in the last 12 months. Like, we've seen this massive explosion in identities, 60% more identities year over year, 90% are over permissioned. And, the people that have been the glue holding this all together in the identity space are breaking. And I think this is the big point, is how do we use agentic solutions to fill these gaps? And that's what I've seen over the last 12 months.
Yeah, obviously identity seems to be at the forefront of this. We've got massive, as the title kind of gives away, are these impersonations and deepfakes. Andy, walk us through that. What's, from your perspective, you're at the kind of edge of that. Give us your perspective on kind of what's changed and a little bit of background about you and Total 360.
Yeah, for sure. And so, again, I'm Andy Syrewicze. I'm a principal security advocate here at Proofpoint MSP, our MSP platform business unit. And so, to kind of dive into that question a little bit, what's changed? Identity is really the new firewall. I know that's a very buzzwordish thing to say, but it's kind of true. And part of that's because of the vastness of the cloud's attack surface, right? We have people working in coffee shops and warehouses, at home, wherever. And when we look at AI, and yes, I said the AI buzzword, when we look at AI, it has lowered the barrier to entry for your novice threat actors, with relatively little amounts of, red teaming knowledge. I can use AI to launch attacks across a vast swath of different targets. And I think, we've seen that play out over the last 12 months and be accelerated by things like OpenClaw, right? Which we'll probably mention once or twice more throughout this session. So that's kind of the way I see it.
Great. And thank you for joining. I really appreciate your perspective. Now we have another gentleman with us, Ambuj. Why don't you walk us through kind of what is it in SecOps that's really kind of changing, and what's going on in that world?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. My name is Ambuj Kumar. I'm co-founder and CEO of Simbian. We are building self-improving SecOps. So the interesting thing with AI is that you go to ChatGPT, it can write poetry, it can do your finance, it can also give you health advice. So it's really good at multitude of things. Now that makes our life a little bit more difficult in security, because attackers can use that AI to write a phishing email, to kind of do recon on your network, to find net new zero-day vulnerability, and it can do all of those things simultaneously. And it costs like 3 cents in token cost. So on defense side, therefore, we need to monitor everything and anything in your SIM, your EDR, XDR, your identity, ITDR, your cloud, all those things, and find out what is the root cause of the problems you are seeing, and mitigate them at scale, at sub-second latency. And this is such a transformation of security operations from where people were even 3 months ago, which is that manual focus and precision and MTTR, most of those metrics now don't make sense. So we are in very exciting but kind of unnerving era with AI in cybersecurity, and the Simbian is trying to make it a little bit better.
Yeah, it seems to me that that a lot of companies are struggling to keep up. I think these bad guys are running as fast as they can. A lot of them state-sponsored or whatever, or very well-sponsored somehow. Bree, walk us through the the kind of the readiness gaps and from your perspective, what you're seeing out there.
Bree Frost, I'm the head of product here at Cloud Range. Our mission as an organization is to make companies battle ready for cyber threats, cyber attacks, and get our security teams trained up, and now incorporate that with AI, against AI. We build cyber ranges as a service, and we have launched an AI validation range where it allows organizations to connect their AI systems to our range. We have a large library of simulated attacks, all the way from simple web server defacements to full APT campaigns, and pull their AI models to test, red team, fail safe, expose, and train their agents on those types of simulated attacks. And so when you talk about readiness, we also train our security teams and bring them in for full facilitated missions. You talk about how it's changed in identity. It's been really interesting because there's a large spectrum of companies. Some are still trying to get their feet under them to understand what is AI 101. And they feel behind the ball and they feel pressure. They're getting pressure from their board of, I don't care if you know how to secure it. We need to be innovative and we need to be at the forefront. Implement it now. Even though teams aren't ready to secure it. All the way through to the other end of the side where we have organizations that say, by 2027, our entire SOC is going to be automated by AI agents. And so there's everything in between. And when you talk about AI, we've seen it evolve. If you've been in the cyber realm in a while, people say, well, this isn't new technology. Machine learning has been around for a long period of time. But then you have generative AI, which came up and launched in 2022 and kind of changed the name of the game. But people treated it as an application. And now what I call AI systems, when you incorporate agentic technology, it's now no longer securing an application. These are digital workers in your network. It's like letting a bunch of junior analysts go loose with less common sense, right? And so if you're not treating those agents with that same type of identity controls, right? Role-based access controls, least privilege, like you're setting yourself up to fail because they're making poor decisions that haven't been trained yet. And that's kind of what we're hoping to try to do with our AI validation range.
Yeah, this new agentic world is really interesting because it is exactly that. You've got junior analysts, junior people running around your organizations, making the same mistakes that an intern or a brand new employee, would make. And, I remember back in the olden days, I had a new IT person join the company, and he was given the responsibility of decommissioning some servers in a rack. And, he started pulling cores, and the first cord he pulled was on the Outlook server. Active. Oops. Right? Yep. And so your agents are going to do the same things, make the same mistakes, and could cost you a lot. This whole field now, and all of you are brought together here because at the forefront of this is our identities. And our identities in the cyber world have always been under attack, but never like this. We now have this identity control plane, right? Where do you think it breaks first? I'll go to you, Justin, first. Is it this, is it human, machine, vendor, contractor, or is it your workflow?
Hey, I think the popular answer would be probably non-human identities, but I'm going to go a little different. I think it's about workflows. I think that over the past, we've built a lot of scripting and automation that's super brittle, and it breaks. And especially with the explosion of identities and everything else that AI is bringing, all the agent activity. And when it breaks, I'm not sure that everybody in organizations know that it's broken. And I think this is where we're going to start seeing this really heading down the curve.
Yeah, I've talked to others who think it's human, and we've done some work with some folks on that front of securing executives, because that seems to be the new attack vector. Anybody else have a feeling on human, machine, vendor, contractor? All right. Justin, what do you think for, kind of how are we going to reduce that blast radius?
Yeah, I think it's all about just in time. We're going to see these privileges, 90% of accounts are overprivileged. And the idea that, okay, now I can give people access just in time, turn it on and off. And we haven't been able to do that with humans in the loop. But with agentic and being able to understand intent behind when you create IDs and entitlements, you're going to be able to narrow that scope, that the attack surface to just seconds or the use of the time and not forever.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of it might go into prevention too. I've talked to a lot of AI folks about guardrails and setting up the rules and all of that stuff. How does that kind of play into this? And does that actually get kind of, make it so that these workflows are more visible and kind of verifiable first?
Yeah, I can speak to that because that's exactly kind of where we focus, right? Is, like I said, a lot of people are told integrate these systems into your network, into your live production systems, and test them, train them on your live production systems. And there's not a place to fail safely. What happens when this goes wrong or makes poor decisions or hallucinates? Like, what does that look like? And I come from a red team background. And so the purpose of red teaming an AI model is to purposely manipulate the data to get it to say false information and read that out loud. And so then where's your snapshot of clean data? How do you roll that backwards after you've manipulated it to say wrong things and do the testing? So not having a safe place to test. And then there's this new type of thought process, which it's AI is securing AI. Like AI is defending against AI attackers. And it's this AI versus AI game that this new era that we're going to kind of get into. I was telling someone, it reminds me of like back in the day when you had the red versus blue Rock'em Sock'em robots. Like, does anyone remember that game? And I'm like, okay, we're just kind of AI fighting AI. And then like Justin made a really good comment about like humans in the loop. How do you test that to where your humans and what information do they need? What do they need to assess? And where do they need to be in that decision-making process to help assess where it's accurate or not, or defending critically? And I think that's the era that we need to get into, instead of just agentic SOC defending against AI threats.
Now, is the problem truly identity, or, Justin, you were talking about kind of these brittle workflows. Is it visibility into that, or is it really an identity problem?
I think that it's not necessarily an identity problem. I think it's that we're ultra siloed in cyber, and each person has their own component of things that they do, whether it's the SOC, whether it's identity, whether it's, endpoint, whatever. And we have to figure out a way to have this a plane across that we can get context between disciplines. And so while identity has, it's largest when you look at attacks, right? Every attack has an identity component, but I think it's this idea about a context plane.
Well, and the context matters now more than ever. It seems like, the AIs with deepfakes and impersonation, we're kind of in this trust crisis. And, whether it's, the president of the United States being, replicated all over Twitter, X, or the bad guys coming at us in very, very, technical and strategic ways. It seems like deepfakes and impersonations are really kind of that front line of this identity crisis of when you can model somebody's voice and somebody's actions and somebody's, face. It almost seems like it's impossible to start catching these and to start combating these. Let's walk through kind of, Andy, maybe you can help us out here. Kind of what's the verification we need to do to stop all these deepfakes and to stop all the impersonators from coming in?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely an issue. I mean, for example, I did a webinar. This was a year ago too. I did a webinar where with, 3 minutes of me talking on a video, I was able to create a deep fake that was good enough to convince my mother that it was me talking, right? So
Andy, are you real now, or is this a deep fake? That's what
I am real now. If I had a newspaper from today, I'd hold it up on the screen, but I don't. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, we definitely need to go. Let me back up here. I really see this as an area where we have almost a back to basics type of mentality with certain things, because when it comes to deep fakes, really what we want is our end users to be aware that this type of stuff is happening and be able to do a sniff test without even really thinking about it, right? And so, I mean, here at Proofpoint, you know, where I sit within the organization, we do a lot with M365, email security. So we see, you know, deep fake type stuff happen through Teams communications, through links and emails. And we also have a security awareness training tool. And that's where I usually land when we have this discussion about deep fakes and spotting deep fakes and things like that. Because what we found is that when you start training end users just on security in general, they tend to become a little bit more skeptical, a little bit more aware of, hey, this doesn't sound quite right. And they start asking questions and that looks like my CEO, but doesn't sound like them. This is a strange out of process type thing. You know, really, we want our end users to become that first line of defense when it comes to spotting deep fakes and audio or video or otherwise, right? Because you know, with social engineering and with AI increasing the number of attacks and capabilities, our end users need to turn from what historically has been our weakest link to, you know, with proper training can be one of our strongest assets. So
yeah, now training is definitely important, but I'm going to step back because I remember getting all the corporate training about phishing emails and email security. And the organization I was with was actually testing us kind of all the time. They were sending us emails, hoping that we'd click on them,
right?
Not hoping that we'd click on them, hoping that we'd delete it, report it to them. And I can tell you, I've sent a bazillion emails. We all have, right?
Yep.
And we all think, oh, I don't ever fall for that. But it hit me, right? At some weak point in my life, I clicked one of those links and I went to IT jail for a little bit and I had to do some extra training, right? How do we get beyond that kind of simple training and really train execs, especially the execs and maybe even their families, to really kind of start, you know, understanding what these models look like and being able to detect them? Do we all need like a safe word?
I mean, I think about how long it's taken the general public to know and think in their brain, don't click the link.
Right.
Like, how many years have we been shouting that from the rooftops? Don't click the link. Don't open the attachment. Don't, right? I think, unfortunately, I think it's going to take time as a generation of technology changes. I think, you know, you think about our kids and our generation and our grandkids, they've had computers in their hands since they were born. And I think that's not the audience of the general public using computers and technology in organizations right now. And so I think it will take time, but I coined a term called, you know, I talk about multi-factor authentication. I say multi-factor validation. So if you get a message from your CEO, do one extra step of validation of, hey, send an email, or hey, even like fake news articles that you think, and you're like, okay, look and see how many other sources are reporting on this, because anything. And that should just be our typical workflow of like, hey, my boss sent me this message. Let me call him real quick, or get a voicemail, or shoot a text, or shoot an email, and just be like, hey, I'm just checking in on that, and use a secondary source of communication to validate the source that it's coming from, or the way the validate or communication is coming from, the secondary out. If it doubles up, then you have both forms of validation, and then, you know, it's legit.
So it sounds like more human in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe Russ, I'll jump in. Like, I think that, at least for me, like OpenClaw and my assistants are just going to read the emails, and I'm going to put into the prompts like, hey, check for these 5 things, and check for the DMARC settings and everything else in the email, and let me know.
Yeah, it seems to be, you know, probably that most common attack vector now is that here's approval for, you know, a $60,000 transfer to, you know, the bank account or to this vendor. Is that what you guys are seeing in play right now, or what type of attacks are we seeing in this market with the deepfakes and impersonations?
I will say that's probably one of the most common, right? Is that C-suite fraud going after some sort of money transfer. And, you know, that always brings me to, you know, eventually something's going to happen. That is an attack along these lines. What can you do to help stop it in its tracks, or at least reduce the blast radius. And my recommendation to businesses is always, when it comes to sensitive business processes like wiring money somewhere, to your point, more human in the loop. There needs to be more than one person required in order to complete that particular type of transaction, right? And so that instantly, all by itself, even if the initial touch point, that person starts going through the process, having a second person in the loop or more will hopefully catch it if the first person did not, right?
Well, and what I'm hearing is good news. I think we're all worried about that our AI, is going to eat all of our jobs. And now I'm hearing almost from everybody that I talk to that we need almost more human in the loop, more checks, even to the point where, I think before AI, we had all these workflows, kind of like you were saying, Justin, that were kind of stitched together and brittle. And now with AI, they're breaking, and it's almost a good thing that's forcing us to kind of rethink those models and rethink those processes to really, harden them. And I'm wondering what you guys are seeing on that front in terms of, how are we putting humans in the loop without breaking down, the speed of business?
My hope, my secret hope is, because I'm terrible at it, my secret hope is that AI takes down email. Like, I hope I know that's crazy to say, right? Like, but I hope that AI makes email irrelevant because it's all AI curated. Like, especially when it comes to business transactions, right? Like Andy was saying, those financial business requests and business transactions from executives and higher level, there is no reason at this point that those business communications should come through email. Someone needs to know how to direct communication and a secure form of communication to me. Whether we use Slack, whether you use Zoom, like whatever it is in your organization and what application you use for direct communication, my hope is you take more of that type of approach, and email is no longer relevant.
Well, as we go back to Justin, because I know he's going to want to talk about Clawbot again. I was
just going to say that.
I know. Having looked at Clawbot, not implemented yet, the first thing they tell you is that it talks to all of those channels. And so, do we need to silo those channels and make them AI proof?
Look, Clawbot, Cloud Code, whatever, right? I think the idea about humans in the loop in a workflows are, I don't know how many workflows that I've written with Cloud Code in the last week that doesn't have a human in the loop. It's just doing stuff. And that's a little scary, right? And I think as Andy or you guys were talking about this, right? And do we actually need to insert someone into every workflow, or how do we get this visibility about everything that's happening in the organization for all our agents? And I think this is going to be the big question in 2026.
I think there will be an orchestration somehow of agents and decision-making and workflows. I think there's always that concept everyone's scared of, like tier 1 analysts will no longer be valid. But I think it's more people are going to be elevating their skill set on how to manage and orchestrate AI and agents instead of doing those workflows and processes themselves.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity there. Go ahead, Ambuj.
Yeah, I have a little bit of contrarian view there, which is that, this is all a human in the loop, right? It may not exactly work the way we hope it would. And I will take, inspiration from what we have seen on email phishing, right? So, I'm pretty sophisticated when it comes to security, right? It's obvious. But even I have fallen to phishing attacks. But if you think about it, right? If somebody sends you an email asking for money that, hey, I'm imprisoned, your 20-year-old friend, transfer $100 to me and I'll be free. If the first reaction in your mind is that, hey, is this a scam, right? Rather than that emotion that, hey, maybe there is a human, my best friend in danger and maybe I can help, I would say there is something wrong with it, right? Being in security, we have seen this so many times that our human emotions get kind of hardened, and we are rewiring our brain, look for threats. But I don't want to live in a world where my first reaction or instinct, somebody asking me for help, is that, hey, I'm being tricked and not my desire to help them, right? So what it tells me that we have wrongly blamed humans for falling to phishing or scams. We should build technology that prevents it. So when you see a phishing email, you should put in bold there that, hey, it's phishing email because of XYZ reasons, DKIM failed, or like, if you are clicking on something that looks like Microsoft.com, it's not actually Microsoft.com, it's, polished character that is. So I think as security industry, we have done a really horrible job in blaming employees or humans and not thinking that we could have solved those problems with technology. And now we are seeing the repeat of the same thing with human in the loop. So let's say that I'm Bank of America and I purchased Simbian to do my AI SOC, right? And they paid us like whatever, and I'm just making this up, right? Like they paid us x amount of money, and Simbian alerts them middle of night that, hey, I'm seeing an attack, what should I do? I mean, it's useless, right? The whole reason a customer is purchasing a product because, no, I don't want to be in loop. I mean, like, don't tell me what you did, right? Give me confidence that actually you can go and do things autonomously without, like getting me in loop. I want to be in control, not in the loop. Very important distinction. And if we start to put human in the loop for everything, right, like the latency of humans will simply be the bottleneck. So we need to elevate ourselves from security defense perspective to create technology where we don't need humans in the loop. We don't need to rely on humans for critical things in real time to keep us secure. And so that's the approach I have taken with my company Simbian. But I firmly believe that something like that is needed, especially with AI helping people on attack side.
Yeah, that kind of ties into something I was going to mention really quick, right? I think there's a new subsection of risk analysis growing here, right? When it comes to agentic AI, because we all know that AI can and will do things in a way that maybe we don't always expect sometimes, right? And so while I think for certain processes, yes, there should be a human in the loop, but your point, I don't think that needs to be every process. And so I think when a new agentic workflow is created, right, there needs to be a risk analysis discussion or process followed at that point in time. Are we okay if this particular workflow has no human in the loop, right? And I think it's going to have to happen on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, exactly. And it's okay to have that, hey, like, this is brilliant piece of technology from Simbian, but it does not do 100% of things. It only does 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever, right? And that percentage should keep growing. So, like, I'm not saying that software should go and, make everything automated. I mean, we don't have that capability, right? But our approach should be that, like, we want to take things away from people. We don't need smart people or hardened people to be there, and we don't need to page our engineers at 2 a.m. right? That's a path for failure.
Well, it seems to me that a lot of this is coming down to people. It's people making decisions on either workflows or that human in the loop. As you all are talking to the board members, if you're talking to the executive suite, what sort of control are they looking for, as you go and you implement these solutions?
I'll take a stab at this. Like most board members are asking as we sell deals, like, hey, is there visibility into what you're doing? Like, why? Tell us the thinking behind what your LLM or your AI agent is doing, and is it auditable, right? So those three things around every process. I think where we get into trouble is you have a bunch of these shadow AI activity going on where these three elements are not prevalent.
And I think I'll add to that a little bit, Justin, just because the executives are always going to look in forms of efficiency and dollars, right? That's their job. And so you see a lot of metrics. We talk about success in our range. What does metrics of AI look like? And you get a lot of how is this saving me money? How is this stopping attacks from us losing money? And you see a lot of the typical reduction in mean time to detection and mean time to response. And, how do you integrate this to move faster, make more money, right? But I think where we're missing a big step from what I've seen is we're missing the accuracy. We're missing the accuracy of that. Did that make that behavior that we want? And was it accurately detecting? Was it accurately finding the attacks? Or is it just creating more false positives and more effort on our security teams to go back and have to respond to more alerts?
Well, and I think, from my perspective, Ambuj, I liked your comment there. And I think we really do run the risk of putting in human in the loop processes that are going to slow down business. And I cannot imagine a world where if you're at Coca-Cola or, L'Oreal or one of these giant brands of having to, for every dollar spent, go through, a 2-3 step human verification process. I'm sure there would be a dollar limit that people would put on it, but those big brands and brands everywhere are spending big dollars. And so, I think your comment is very valid, which is we've got to get beyond that. We've got to assume the human's always going to be there and screwing up. And how do we prevent them from screwing up? And we have seen it in email somewhat successfully, but then email for me gets harder to deliver, right? And it gets harder to make transactions, and everything gets more difficult. And that's not in the board's interests or the CEO's interests. It's really about speed and efficiency. And if it's not bringing us speed and efficiency, I think they'll rip it out.
100%.
Has anybody seen rip outs coming of all these automations that are getting messed up? And
yeah, we are seeing a lot in security operations space. So we had a whole generation of tools called SOAR, and it's spelled SOAR, but it actually SORE. And for 10 years. And idea was that you'll go write a Python program, right? To automate, things. So if you saw like Bob clicking on email and email looked iffy, what should we do? Turns out that there are so many corner cases that it required 10x more work to create those playbooks. And once you create those playbooks, then figuring out which ones to trigger when, it's a never-ending process. So, but like the lure of automation in security operations has always been high, because you need 24/7, right? You need like people, you need reliable people, and you need people who are responsive, and you need too many of them. So you don't have money to pay. You need somebody who is like willing to work night shift, and also smart and reliable. Turns out that intersection of all those things are people out of college for 3 months before they start to think about their next career. So when SOAR vendors reached out to SOC people and offered this playbook approach, lots of companies jumped on it because they saw some promise. But now they have seen the failure of that approach. So lots of them are replacing their SOAR with something agentic like AI SOC. So that's a very strong trend we have seen.
Yeah. Now, when I think about this, I go back to that common, or at least what I think is the weakest link, which I think the human is the weakest link in my book, is because we're emotional more than anything, right? Is we're suckers for emotion. And if my kid's in jail, I'm going to bail them out. Or if my grandkid's in jail, I'm going to bail them out. Or if my CEO tells me to send 60 grand, I'm going to send 60 grand because he told me to do it. This is all well and good. And I think you have to almost make that assumption. And, even in my personal life, you think about your privacy. Your privacy is going to be violated. Your identity, my credit card is going to get stolen. Something's going to happen. And I remember buying insurance one time, and they're like, "Do you want, privacy protection?" I'm like, "Well, what is it?" And they told me it was, well, we give you, 36 hours of a project manager to help you get your identity back. And I said, "Well, how much is that?" He's $12 a year. And I said, "Sign me up." Right? It's the best $12 a year I can spend. So I think, as a human, as a person, as in my own, personal life, that's kind of how I dealt with it. Is is I'm expecting it. I'm expected to get hacked. I'm expected to lose my identity at some point. It has happened to me already without with me doing everything I could. So now we're really talking about, if it's going to happen, which we know it's going to happen, how do we recover? And so we've got this kind of 30-minute breakout where everything seems to happen, and speed really does matter in this. So let's walk through a little bit of an attack's happened. What are we looking at? Are we looking at how to detect this, how to triage it, how to contain it, or how to recover? I don't know. Who wants to take that? Bree, you want to take a stab at that one to start us off?
Yeah, I think your big question is your security team ready? And do you know if they are, right? That's the mission of my company, and why I get up and do what I do every day is, have you built the muscle memory for when this happens? Have you run through the motions? Do you know the steps? You know what decisions? And it's not just your security team, right? We have all sat through painfully awful tabletops and know what that decision looks like. And some great, some not, for better or worse. But is your security team ready? Do they have the tools? So it's tools and people. Do you have the tools needed to get the visibility that you need to respond, to contain, to detect, defend, to understand what's happening? And then do you have the experience to respond here? And then what does that look like when that fails? What access? Remember when, my boss asks me all the time what keeps me up at night, and it will always be supply chain. It will always be supply chain all the time. But when, you think back to Log4j or some big SolarWinds, some big supply chain event happening, and people weren't even able to correctly assess if their network was vulnerable. And so I think we're kind of almost walking back into that same era of do you even know what your AI systems have access to? And I think that's where you start. Do you even know what it can touch? Do you know when you talk about identity, what access does it have to that system? Can it gain higher privileges to that system? Can it evolve? And then you start from there and you walk backwards.
And Justin, yeah, Justin, I think you were talking about that, of these kind of shadow AI in your organization. And, it's you and I talked before about this, remembering that there were these shadow Wi-Fi networks when Wi-Fi first came out, right? And you had Boardroom all of a sudden showed up, and Mike's desk showed up. And you're like, what's going on? And it drove IT teams nuts. I can't imagine the amount of AI usage going on inside of a major corporation, and how you even to start to detect that. And when something breaks at that level, how is an IT organization even supposed to detect that some user has a shadow prompt running somewhere, and that it's wreaking havoc in the network?
Yeah, we built our response playbooks around what systems, what lateral movement, what identities are involved, like our triage packages. But we haven't inserted the AI component yet, or maybe we are at the infancy there. And I think that's Bree, you were talking to that, and I think this is something everybody needs to take a step back and say, hey, do my playbooks for XYZ have that AI component?
Ambuj, when you talk to your CEOs and board members, how many of them have these playbooks? How many of them are ready and rehearsed to go after these new attacks?
Suddenly there is a lot more awareness than before. And AI has certainly reset people's expectation as well as their attention. So even with Anthropic talking about mythos, right? There is a very high level of awareness, and people are kind of scared. And the thing with AI is that, man, every minute feels like a year. If I look back of just the news from last 2 days, it feels like it was 3 months long. But oh no, it was only yesterday that. So even today, yesterday, OpenAI announced cyber-focused model. So only yesterday. Today there is Opus 4.7 from Anthropic. This is following mythos talk that was only last week. So if you miss this cycle for a week and come back, you are so far behind. So in terms of people's attention, awareness, even their purses, everything is lined up. Now where AI companies, right, like Simbian have to do their job is to win trust of customers. So almost no one is asking that, hey, like what you are doing is valuable or not. What they are asking though, that can your solution work in my environment with my business processes? We follow this step 1, step 2, step 3 before making a change to our firewall. But if we see somebody doing something unexplainable, we immediately make changes to our access control, because that's a reversible decision, right? But we see somebody, for example, sending out PII information out, but if they are an engineer and they have done it 20 times in past, we infer that they are just checking our detection rules. So we don't want to penalize them. No need for us to create another alert. So all this kind of contextual information that is very, very core to organizations. So they are asking questions that can you make use of that? And can you create maybe a context lake that understands my business processes, my unique circumstances, and show value in my environment? And I think, like as companies do that, like, people are more than willing to try them.
Well, that is a new term for me. I've heard of data moats, but I have never heard of a context lake. So how are you building these context lakes, and walk us through these context lakes?
Yeah, that's very, very important topic. So if you think about it, right, for most of our, like human existence, 45,000 years, we relied on being smarter than the other side, or knowing something that the other side didn't know, right? Like, intelligence was a big thing. If you knew how to make like guns, you could kill the entire army of, sword fighters. Now that intelligence is commoditized. We have Opus, which is smarter than me, like probably smarter than all of us put together. Maybe if not there, like maybe it will be, it will get to that point in 2 days. the pace of innovation is so in the world where attackers have same level of intelligence as defenders. Like attacker AI is just as powerful as defender AI, and both of them are much more powerful than you, right? Human who needs to make sure that their organization does not get hacked. What can we do to protect ourselves, right? What is the code that is not known to others? So then this idea came to me that context matters, and that is something that only I know, right? The relationship I have with my family, right? Or little argument that we had with our spouse, or whether an application is inside DMZ or outside. The fact that there is PII information in database, but that's all fake because it's QA environment. Or the fact that we have 2 Johns, one is CEO, another is DevOps engineer. When your CFO clicks on a phishing email, the investigation and response has to be drastically different from when your engineer clicks on the same phishing email. The attack. So all this contextual information is critical, not just to personalize, but also to prevent. Because if I'm an attacker and I see like 20 different applications that are accessible from outside, I'm doing DDoS on all of them, and it costs me $1, I spend $20. But if you are a defender, you know that out of those 20, only these 3 are relevant. So you will only spend $3. So you also have cost arbitrage to protect yourself. So all these things we are capturing in context lake. And my firm belief is that as intelligence gets commoditized, context is the only thing that matters. So the sooner like we start to capture it, and more comprehensively we capture it, and it comes in different forms. We have standard operating procedures. So you follow business process, that becomes part of context lake. We see an alert about endpoint. Now, as we started to investigate that endpoint, we figure out there are 3,000 endpoints that you didn't even know existed in your environment. That's missing from your asset inventory because it was never registered. Now that becomes part of the context lake, right? We find that a certain class of software is not updated, right? And there's a pattern that anything that goes to lab user is not updated. Now that becomes a process that we can trigger an agent that goes and patches it, right? So so it's not just what you tell us proactively, but also what we find. And so think of agents as digital workers that are in your environment doing all kinds of work, and they are creating traces and like reasoning, and you are constantly adding to the accumulated knowledge. So that is our context lake.
Now it seems that we've done, or you guys have done, a good job at automating kind of that detection layer. And I imagine most companies have that, from applications way back, they have that automation in there. Triage is a different thing, containment's a different thing, and recovering is a completely different thing. I would imagine there's a lot of value in that in trying to automate that containment. Have you guys seen any workflows that they're actually working to contain those all the threats coming in and all the harm being done?
Yeah, I mean, I will quickly answer and then pass to others. I mean, we do that all the time. Like any action that comes, any threat that comes, we correlate with other threats, and many times we also find that system 1 thought that it was informational alert, system 2 thought that it was also informational alert, and then we thought that why are there 2 systems all firing information alert at the same time? Or maybe because it was a sophisticated attack that none of these systems detected. So we elevate their severity, we investigate it, we also give responses. So and our customers can classify some responses that they are okay our system taking as is, and others they simply don't trust us, right? They're like, no, like we see enough value in you creating actions, we don't want you to take that. So but as but they are letting agents do actions, and as these agents become more trustworthy, right, and that will come through experience, right, then people will give more and more control to agents for containment. But it's very much needed because that's the only way we can react fast enough.
Any other thoughts on automating containment or not automating containment?
And we've got something in our stack that is along those lines. So we have an AI agent that monitors Microsoft Teams conversations, for example. And if it detects a malicious link or something along those lines, it can flag it, let everybody know in the chat, or anybody that's part of that chat, let them know that, hey, there's a malicious message, don't click on anything here. And it can even have it automatically delete that entire chat thread so nobody comes along later on and accidentally clicks things, right? So I don't remember who it was that mentioned, but this AI versus AI thing, and going back to our conversation about taking human out of the loop in certain cases, when it comes to triage and containment, I think that's one of the places where, because of the speed of AI-enabled attacks, we're probably going to have to let defensive AI do its thing, right?
Yes, and I'll push back a little bit, kind of combining both Ambuj and Andy's comments. Is I think it's context. Because when you talk about containing and it automate, like you can't just take your DC offline. Right? Like there are certain endpoints that you can't just contain if that's where the first detection happened. And so if you're in an OT network and you're running, some type of critical infrastructure, that there's a lot of places in your network that can't just be automatically contained and cut ties to the network. It'll take everything down. And so yes, I think it's very important to give that context, and that's where that orchestration and humans need to prepare those agents to happen, and making sure that all those workflows are thought through, and kind of every use case scenario has been practiced.
Now we've got a few minutes left here. I do want to get towards kind of talking to the audience a little bit. If I'm a CEO or a CIO out there, you guys are on the front lines of this battlefield, and you're seeing these threats come in and all the ways people are reacting. Walk us through, maybe 1 or 2 things that you wish you had rehearsed before that attack had happened. What did you not think about that maybe we should have thought about, or that you now think about at every step? Ambuj, why don't you lead us off there?
I'll say that, building an inventory of your past incidents. So what threats you saw, what actions you took, and to the extent where it's documented, and that's very, very helpful, because I can build a map that when these kind of activities happen, then you take these kind of actions. So that makes life a lot easier for AI agents to follow. So I think rather than being like ad hoc and like if the first thing you can, the one thing you can do today to make your life a little bit easier tomorrow is that start to document your processes, your investigations as you are going through even manually today.
Bree, how about you? Anything that you wish or your customers had wished they had rehearsed before now?
Yeah, I mean, my background, I'm always going to scream emulation, and that incorporates AI. So I've made deepfakes. Andy said he'd made deepfakes of himself. I've made deepfakes of my own, and same using kind of AI as that attacker mindset to walk me through how that attack works, and then how to defend better against how it makes those decisions. And so I think we need to kind of come at it from that perspective. But it's like, oh, that's how AI thinks about bypassing a firewall. And it's not historically the way that security teams and their process walks through. And so I always challenge everybody, use Claude, use OpenClaw, use, whatever tools are out there to make your own deepfakes, and use that technology so you understand the decision making that it's coming across and rehearse it. So when you understand that mindset, you understand how to defend it. And we've seen pretty good success with that.
Andy, how about you? Any rehearsals going on with your customers?
One of the common conversations that we have is along the lines of OneDrive for Business and SharePoint Online, right? Those are kind of the places where that's the new file server for the cloud era, right? And I talk to a lot of customers that they are so excited, like, we're going to integrate AI into our business processes. We want to flip on Copilot for 365 right now and do all the AI things, right? I talk to a lot of them that despite recommendations, they just go ahead and flip it on and just let the whole organization go hog wild on it. And then come to find out, whoa, hey, Bob from our janitorial team can see payroll information and things like that, right? And so that's a common thing I come across is like, boy, we really wish that we understood what the AI agent or the AI application's visibility was going to be in our environment before we flip things on. And so that's one of our common recommendations is get your house in order first, start with a very small team when you start rolling out AI, and then go from there. And so that's probably one of the more common things that I run into from where I sit in the industry.
Justin, how about you? You're out there on the front lines too. What are you rehearsing with your clients?
You can have great strategy. You can say, hey, I'm going to do this with AI. I'm going to have these governance controls. But at the end of the day, people are going to do shadow IT like crazy. They're going to cloud code. They're going to create all kinds of things. And it's what I've seen is like there needs to be an amnesty program. Like, just tell us what you do, so there's the visibility there where you're not going to ding. You can even do it anonymously, but let us know what's going on. And so then when we do get in a high stress situation with incident response or some other audit, we can have that to understand.
Well, Justin, Bree, Andy, and Ambuj, thank you so much for joining today. I think we've given a lot of people a lot of things to think about. We're definitely seems like a foot race with the bad guys now, and it seems like all we're doing now is sprinting, and and they seem to be getting faster and faster to all of your points. And the Anthropic code, the Mythos code, that's just the first step. And the word I always put out there at the end of this that we all kind of cringe at is quantum. Because when that comes, the whole world changes again. So, so I appreciate everybody joining, and thank you so much. And we'll look for you on the next webinar.
Thanks, Russ.
Thanks, guys.